Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here from Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Brian Liddy and I'm here with a run through of today's headlines. So I'll start off with the usual coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 3,676,851 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 2,949,302 have been confirmed negative. 727,549 have tested positive. There are 2,569 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms and not all those with symptoms will be tested. There are 10 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 9,572. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 706 were in hospital last night, and 54 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. this morning, 4,346,736 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination. 3,949,736 had received their second dose, and 1,687,792 have received a third dose or booster. The latest UK figures show that 144,969 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 159 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just hospitals. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, gave an update on the general COVID situation to the Scottish Parliament today. Ms Sturgeon shared the latest information on the recently detected Omicron variant and outlined the steps the Scottish Government are taking to slow its spread and also to curb transmission of the virus more generally. The First Minister stressed that there is no evidence at this stage to suggest that the disease caused by Omicron is more severe than that caused by other variants. However, further analysis is required to be certain of this. Ms Sturgeon went on to confirm that as of 5 p.m. yesterday, there were 9 confirmed cases in Scotland. 5 of these are in Lanarkshire and 4 are in Greater Glasgow and Clyde. She said that the Scottish Government has preliminary information on all 9 of these cases, and she stressed that health protection teams are continuing their investigations. While the contact tracing exercise is still ongoing, health protection teams have established that all 9 cases are linked. They all trace back to a single private event on 20th of November. The First Minister said that she expects there will be more cases identified over the coming days, and that there are also, I'll repeat that. The First Minister said that she expects there will be more cases identified over the coming days that are also linked to this event, and the lack of any known travel or overseas connection to these cases does suggest that there is some community transmission of Omicron already happening in Scotland. Ms Sturgeon said that she was hopeful that as all known Omicron variant cases are so far linked to this single event, suggests that community transmission may still be limited. The House of Commons is debating an SNP motion of censure against Boris Johnson over his personal role in the growing Tory sleaze and corruption scandal that has engulfed Westminster. The motion, tabled in the name of SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford and all SNP MPs, criticises the Tory Prime Minister, who has been at the centre of the sleaze scandal and repeatedly rocked by allegations of misconduct since coming to office. Commenting, SNP Westminster Ian Blackford said, "Boris Johnson is at the rotten core of the Tory sleaze and corruption scandal that has engulfed Westminster. It absolutely stinks and action must be taken. Since coming to office, the Prime Minister has been embroiled in sleaze and misconduct, lurching from one scandal to another. He has repeatedly lied, acted unlawfully, undermined the ministerial code, handed peerages to Tonor donors, let rule-breaking Tory MPs off the hook, and solicited dodgy donations for his own luxury holidays and home refurbishments. The charge sheet is utterly damning, and he cannot be allowed to get off scot-free. No one is above the rules, not even Boris Johnson. People in Scotland are looking in horror at a broken Westminster system that has never felt more remote, arrogant and corrupt. Parliament must finally act, or it will demonstrate yet again that Westminster is broken beyond repair, and the only real fix is for Scotland to shake Westminster off for good as an independent country. The debate was continuing as we came on air. A new process to investigate prison deaths has been welcomed in principle by Justice Secretary Keith Brown. In November 2019, then Justice Secretary Humza Yousaf asked Wendy Sinclair Gibbon, Her Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons for Scotland, to review the response to deaths in prisons. Reporting today, the review has made a number of recommendations, including that an independent body should carry out an investigation into every death in prison. This is intended to complement the current inquiry processes, including fatal accident inquiries. Adopting this recommendation would bring Scotland in line with England, Wales and Northern Ireland. All of the review's recommendations have been accepted in principle by the Scottish Government. Other recommendations include involving families or next of kin of those who have died in prison custody as the investigation process. Forgive me, I'll reread that. Other recommendations include involving families of or next of kin of those who have died in prison custody in the investigation process, and stipulated that investigations must be completed within a matter of months. The review further recommends methods of learning from cases should be built into the entire process from the outset. As part of Tax Administration and Maintenance Day, the Government has set out further detail on its work to deliver a modern, simple and effective tax system which helps taxpayers get their tax right the first time. This includes work to support the delivery of announcements from the autumn budget and to help stimulate economic growth as we continue our recovery from the pandemic. Today's announcement follows the commitment the Chancellor made at the Autumn Budget and Spending Review 2021 for there to be a dedicated day this autumn for the administration and maintenance of the UK's tax system, supporting greater transparency, discipline and accessibility of tax policy making. Documents published today include an update on reforms to small brewers relief, which will see the government invest around £15 million of additional funding into the craft brewing sector. This will enable small breweries to expand without losing tax relief and addresses concerns raised by stakeholders that the current scheme fails to incentivise growth. A technical consultation setting out further details on the conclusions to the government's review of business rates, including more frequent revaluations, improvement relief, exemptions for green technology and administrative reforms. A report on research and development, R&D, tax reliefs, providing further details on announcements made at the budget, which included refocusing relief in UK, targeting abuse, and supporting innovation by expanding qualifying expenditure to capture cloud and data costs. It also provides a summary of responses to the consultation. The SNP says Scotland is paying an outrageous price for Brexit, after a new report from the Office for National Statistics shows the economy has taken a battering while Northern Ireland has prospered because it has stayed in the EU single market. Northern Ireland has largely recovered from the hit of the COVID-19 because of the specially arranged protocol, giving it the best performance across all UK nations and regions according to official statistics. In contrast, the Scottish economy has suffered a 6% hit. During Brexit negotiations, the Scottish Government asked for the same protections as Northern Ireland, but repeated requests for similar arrangements were ignored by the Westminster Government. The report also notes that the London area was also less impacted by Brexit to record the second best performance across Britain. Commenting on the report, SNP MSP Claire Adamson said, "Scotland is paying an outrageous price for being ignored by Westminster for a Brexit inflicted on us against our will. These numbers are not some abstract theory. In the real world, they mean crippling lost revenue for businesses across the Scottish economy, and in turn, that means lost jobs, lost income, and hardship for families up and down the country. Northern Ireland has been insulated against the worst effects of Brexit because of the special deal arranged for them to remain in the EU's single market. Vladimir Putin has warned NATO countries that deploying weapons or soldiers to Ukraine would cross a red line for Russia and trigger a strong response, including a potential deployment of Russian missiles targeting Europe. NATO countries have warned Putin against further aggression against Ukraine as foreign ministers gathered in Latvia to discuss the military alliance's contingencies for a potential Russian invasion. Tensions have soared following a build-up of nearly 100,000 Russian troops, as well as tanks, artillery, and even short-range ballistic missiles within the striking distance of Ukraine's borders. While a similar crisis played out over a Russian troop build-up in April, officials from the US and Ukraine have warned that the threat of a Russian offensive this winter remains very real because of a failing ceasefire agreement and a worsening political climate. Speaking today in his most expansive comments on the crisis yet, the Russian president complained of NATO's historical expansion to Russia's borders and warned that substantial NATO military support for Ukraine would cross a red line for Russia. In particular, he warned against the stationing in Ukraine of missile defense systems similar to those in Romania and Poland. Putin claimed they could serve as cover to deploy offensive weapons such as Tomahawk missiles capable of reaching Moscow in minutes. Putin's remarks seemed designed to echo the fears of Europe's Cold War missile crises. NATO countries such as the United Nations have supplied Kiev with military aid, including lethal weapons like Javelin anti-tank missiles. But aside from isolated discussions among lawmakers, there are no plans to station air defence batteries in Ukraine. In Riga, the capital of Latvia, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Tuesday that the West was on alert over Russia's increasingly bellicose rhetoric and unusual troop movements. Western countries have sanctioned Russia for sending its soldiers and heavy weapons to fight in the southeast Ukraine, where more than 14,000 people have been killed since 2014. Since 2017, NATO has deployed 4 international battalion groups to Poland and to the Baltic countries of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania in order to deter Russia from launching an attack. Barbados ditched Queen Elizabeth as head of state, forging a new republic today, with its first ever president and severing its last remaining colonial bonds nearly 400 years after the first English ships arrived at the Caribbean island. At the stroke of midnight, the new republic was born to cheers of hundreds of people lining Chamberlain Bridge in the capital, Bridgetown. A 21-gun salute fired as the national anthem of Barbados was played over a crowded Heroes Square. Prince Charles stood somberly as Queen Elizabeth's royal standard was lowered and the new Barbados declared, a step which Republicans hope will spur discussions of similar proposals in other former British colonies that have the Queen as their sovereign. We the people must give Republic Barbados its spirit and its substance, Sandra Mason, the island's first president, said. We must shape its future. We are each other's and our nation's keepers. We the people are Barbados. Barbados casts the removal of the Queen as a way to finally break with the demons of its colonial history. After a dazzling display of Barbadian dance and music, complete with speeches celebrating the end of colonialism, Barbadian singer Rihanna was declared a national hero by Prime Minister Mia Mottley, the leader of Barbados' Republican movement. The birth of the Republic 55 years ago to the day since Barbados declared independence unclasps almost all the colonial bonds that have kept the tiny island tied to England since the English ship claimed it for King James I and the Six of Scotland in 1625. It may also be a harbinger of a broader attempt by other former colonies to cut ties to the UK monarchy as it braces for the end of Elizabeth's nearly 70-year reign. Full stop this colonial page, Winston Farrell, a Barbadian poet, told the ceremony. Some have grown up stupid under the Union Jack, lost in the castle of their skin. More than £11 million has been awarded to 2 drug projects to enable them to expand their residential rehabilitation service as part of a commitment to increase the number of beds in Scotland by 50% to 650 by 2026. River Garden in Auchencruive in South Ayrshire will use the funding over the next 5 years to increase capacity from 7 to 56 residents and build a unit to meet the specific needs for women. NHS Lothian will receive around £5 million to create capacity to support around 600 additional placements over 5 years at Lothian and Edinburgh Abstinence Programme, otherwise called LEAP, and increase capacity at the Ritson Detoxification Clinic from 8 beds to 12. This will enable the board to develop a pathway to rehab for those using complex polysubstances and illicit benzodiazepines. The funding is part of the additional £100 million announced as part of the national mission to improve access to residential rehabilitation. In a statement to Parliament on progress with residential rehabilitation, Minister for Drugs Policy, Angela Constance, outlined plans to ensure that by 2026, at least 1,000 people are publicly funded to go to rehab every year, a 300% increase on the number prior to the launch of the national mission. Drugs Policy Minister Angela Constance said, "While there is much to be done to address our drug death crisis, we are making changes to support people to access the treatment and recovery that is right for them. Our commitment to increase the number of publicly funded places by 300% and the number of beds by 50% will provide options for those who can safely access and who want to access residential rehab." A consultation on the role and remit of a public energy agency for Scotland has been launched. The agency will lead and coordinate the transformation that will be required to deliver Scotland's heat and building strategy, which sets out the pathway for reducing emissions in homes and buildings by more than 2/3 by 2030. The dedicated body will be fully established by September 2025, but recognising the urgency of the need to act, a virtual agency will be launched as early as next year to begin coordinating and scaling up existing and new delivery programmes. The consultation gives organisations from across the public, private and third-party sectors, together with communities and individuals, the opportunity to share their views on aspects such as how the agency can best support local authorities in the transformation that will be required to reduce emissions across our homes and buildings. Net Zero and Energy Secretary Michael Matheson said, "Delivering on our ambition to reduce emissions from our homes and buildings will be transformative, affecting communities, businesses and households all across Scotland. We must work collaboratively across public and private sectors, across Parliament and across governments to deliver it." Charitable projects helping deliver food and vital supplies to those suffering in the Afghanistan crisis are to be backed by £360,000 from the Scottish Government's Humanitarian Emergency Relief Fund. Are to be backed by £360,000 from the Scottish Government's Humanitarian Emergency Fund. The figure I have here is £360,000 from the voice in my ear. Is that correct? You do exist. I'm just saying to the voice in my ear. Or to the viewer at home. Anyway, so let me start this item again, please, just for clarity's sake. Charitable projects helping deliver food and vital supplies to those suffering in the Afghanistan crisis are to be backed by £360,000 from the Scottish Government's Humanitarian Emergency Fund. The funds will go to Tier Fund Christian Aid and Islamic Relief, which are providing aid in the country where 18 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance, including nearly 10 million children. In September, the Scottish Government announced £250,000 from the HEF for Afghanistan. However, given the acute need and deteriorating conditions, this has now been increased to £360,000 in total. Christian Aid and Islamic Relief's joint project in Nangarhar province will deliver food and hygiene packages to more than 1,000 households. Tear Fund's project will deliver food and hygiene items and blankets for winter to 2,000 households. Hygiene kits will be distributed as part of both projects to help provide increased protection against COVID-19. So I'm pretty sure that that's the last of our news stories. Now at 20:07. Just to let you know that, as usual, we have a need for funds here to keep going here at Broadcasting Scotland. So I'm going to ask if you could contribute to our crowdfunder again. And as usual, if you do already contribute, then we thank you. But we can't continue to do what we do without your help and support. So if you can, if you're not already supporting us, then if you could spare some cash, then that would be greatly appreciated. So before I go, it only goes for me to say a happy St Andrew's Day today, and to celebrate that here in Broadcasting Scotland at 8 o'clock this evening after tonight's show, we've got a special musical event to celebrate St Andrew's Day with Hugh and Mags from Celtic Highway at 8 p.m. So please tune in again later and join us here. So that's it from me tonight. So have a good evening, and we'll see you again shortly. Goodbye.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
Are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.